I always thought I knew how the last chapter of my working life would look. For years I pictured it in small, comforting details. I would walk out of the glass doors of City Hall for the last time with a cardboard box in my arms and a smile on my face. Inside that box would be 31 years of my life in miniature. A chipped World's Best Mom mug my daughter gave me in 5th grade, a faded photo of my old payroll team from the 90s, a cactus that somehow survived 3 office moves, and a little paper calendar with my retirement date circled in red. May 31st. I had whispered that date to myself like a promise. 53 and free. Not wealthy, not extravagant, but free. I worked as a payroll supervisor for the city of Columbus. Solid, boring work, the kind nobody notices unless something goes wrong. I knew every pay code, every contract clause, every little quirk of every department. I could tell you which firefighter always forgot to submit overtime on time, which parks employee always mistyped their hours, which supervisor liked to forget they had hit the vacation cap. People came to me with their problems. Missing hours, messed up checks, questions about their retirement statements. And for years I'd lean back in my chair, push my glasses up my nose and explain how it all worked. I was the woman who knew the rules. The steady one. The safe pair of hands. Maybe that's why everyone assumed I would never really leave. The truth was the past few years had worn me thin. The new software rollout that never quite worked the way it was supposed to. The budget cuts. The endless emails. The younger hires who looked at me like I'd come with the furniture. I wasn't bitter, just tired. Tired in a way that went deeper than my knees and my back. Tired in my bones. Retirement for me wasn't about Florida or cruises or golf. I dreamed of quieter things. Mornings on my small back porch with coffee and a book. Volunteering once a week at the library. Taking slow walks around the neighborhood without checking the time. Maybe, if I was brave enough, a little road trip by myself just to prove I still could. I had done the math a dozen times. My pension wouldn't be lavish, but it would be enough. I owned my small house outright. The mortgage was paid off the same year my daughter graduated college. I had a modest 401k, a paid-off 10-year-old car, and no real vices except coffee and paperback novels from the bargain bin. For the first time in my adult life, the horizon looked like mine. Then, 3 months before that red circle date, my phone lit up with my daughter's name at 11:42 p.m. I remember the exact time because I had already been asleep, the TV still flickering in my bedroom, a rerun of some crime show playing low in the background. That late at night, a call is never good news. My heart was already beating faster as I fumbled for my glasses and grabbed the phone. "Hey honey," I said, my voice thick with sleep. "Everything okay?" All I heard at first was breathing. An even shallow. "Mom," Sarah whispered. "Are you awake?" "I am now." I tried to joke, but the words died as soon as I said them. "What's wrong?" There was a pause and then a sound I hadn't heard from her in years. A broken, childlike sob. "He left," she choked out. "Tom left. He's gone. Mom, he's really gone." I sat straight up in bed, the room spinning for a second. "What do you mean he left? Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm in the car," she said. I could hear the engine hum behind her words, the faint whoosh of passing traffic. "I'm just driving. I didn't know where else to go." "I'm so sorry, Mom, I know it's late, but I didn't know who else to call." "Come here," I said immediately. "Just come here. I'll put coffee on. Drive slow. Don't hang up, stay on the phone with me." It was instinct. The same instinct that had me sitting up with her during fevers when she was 3, that had me standing in the doorway of her bedroom during thunderstorms when the lightning scared her. No matter how old your child is, something in you stays primed, ready to move. While she drove, the story came out in jagged pieces between tears. There had been arguments for months, big ones and small ones. Tension that never seemed to ease. Sarah had hinted at problems before, but she always brushed them off. "We're just stressed, Mom. Work, the house, you know. Everyone fights." Tonight, though, it hadn't been just a fight. "He told me he's done," she said, her voice small and disbelieving. "He said he doesn't want to be married anymore. That he's tired of dragging me along. He said he feels like he's raising another child, not living with a partner. He already has someone else, Mom. He admitted it. He's been seeing her for months. He said I could keep the house if I can afford it. Like that's supposed to make it better." Her words were slurred with tears, anger and humiliation twisted together. "How long until you're here?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady for both of us. 10 minutes, she whispered. I'm getting off the freeway now. I went downstairs, turned on the porch light and started a pot of coffee even though it was nearly midnight. My hands moved automatically, filter, scoop water while my mind raced ahead. Sarah and Tom had been married for 10 years. They had a nice house in a suburb 20 minutes away, 2 cars, 2 good jobs, a golden retriever named Max, and a life that from the outside looked as solid as bedrock. Apparently it had been sand. Headlights swung across my front window and a moment later I heard her key in the lock. She stepped inside and for a second I saw not the 30-year-old professional woman she was, but the teenager who used to stomp in after school, backpack dangling from one shoulder. Same messy brown hair, same hazel eyes, just with more shadows. Her mascara had streaked down her cheeks and her hands were shaking. She held herself like someone bracing against an impact that had already happened. I pulled her into my arms. She was almost my height but she felt small. He just watched me pack a bag, she whispered into my shoulder. He stood in the doorway and watched me pack. He didn't say, don't go. He didn't say anything. He just said, I'll have my lawyer contact you. He called a lawyer before he called me, Mom. My chest ached with a mix of fury and helplessness. I wanted to march over there and knock on his perfect front door and demand he explain himself like he was one of my clerks who'd misentered a time card. But life isn't payroll. There's no simple correction code for a broken marriage. Sit down, I said softly. I made coffee. We'll figure it out. She sank onto the couch, clutching a throw pillow like a shield. I can't afford the house alone, she said as if that was the worst part to admit. The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance. I've been doing the math in my head all evening. It doesn't work. I can't do it without his income. And with a divorce with lawyer fees. Her voice trailed off. I'm going to lose everything. You're not losing everything, I said. You have your job. You have me. She let out a shaky laugh that was closer to a sob. That's it, Mom. That's the list. My job and you. She looked up at me then, eyes red and raw. You were about to retire, she whispered. I know that. I know you were counting down the days. I saw the little calendar on your fridge. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't have anywhere else to go. There it was, that sharp, twisting guilt sinking its hooks into my chest. I felt it settle there, heavy and familiar. For years I had told myself I raised an independent daughter. I encouraged her to move out, to live her own life, to make her own choices. And she had. But in the worst moment of her life she hadn't gone to a friend or an aunt or a pastor or a therapist. She had come home. To me. I looked at my daughter. My only child, the person I had loved longer and more fiercely than anyone else on this earth. And I thought about that red circle on my calendar. About mornings on the porch and quiet afternoons and the freedom I had been so close to touching. Then I looked at the way her shoulders shook. The way her hands trembled around the mug I handed her. The way she clung to the pillow like it was the only thing holding her together. The balance shifted in an instant. Maybe it shouldn't have. Maybe I should have taken a day, a week, a month to think everything through. To ask hard questions. To draw boundaries. But mothers don't think in terms of boundaries when their children are drowning. We think in terms of lifeboats. I reached over and took her hand. We'll figure it out, I repeated. If we need to talk to a lawyer, we'll talk to a lawyer. If you need a place to stay, you'll stay here. I can work a little longer. Retirement can wait. You come first. She closed her eyes and let out a long breath, like air escaping a balloon. I don't deserve you, she said hoarsely. At the time I thought it was the most honest thing she had ever said. I didn't know yet how true those words would turn out to be. The first week felt almost peaceful, the way difficult things sometimes do before the dust settles and reveals the real damage underneath. Sarah moved into her old bedroom, the one with the slanted ceiling and the creaky floorboard near the window. I hadn't changed it much since she moved out after college. The posters were gone, but the warm yellow paint remained, along with the bookshelf still holding her old childhood favorites. Little Women, Black Beauty, and a worn-out copy of Anne of Green Gables she read 3 times every summer. She placed her suitcase on the bed and stood there for a long moment, staring at the room as if it were a time capsule she wasn't sure she wanted to open. Smells the same, she said quietly. Old house smell, I replied. No, she insisted. It smells like safety. I didn't say anything. Didn't trust myself to. That first night she slept for 12 straight hours. Later she told me she hadn't truly slept in weeks. During the day she drifted through the house in oversized pajamas, wrapped in a blanket-like armor. She jumped whenever her phone buzzed, and once when an unknown number called, she burst into tears and threw the phone across the couch as if it had burned her. Lawyers? I asked gently. Tom, she whispered. I can't talk to him yet. So I picked up the phone for her when needed. I screened her emails. I wrote down deadlines. I refilled her tea. I fell back into a familiar rhythm, the rhythm of mothering. Not the proud, celebratory kind you do when your child succeeds. The other kind. The emergency kind. But underneath all the caretaking, a quiet fear began stitching itself into my thoughts. She was 30 years old. And she needed me the way she had at 13. On the second week, the bills began arriving, cold, white envelopes with sterile windows that held realities no amount of tea or hugs could soften. Mortgage. Utilities. Attorney retainer fees. A medical bill from when she visited urgent care during a panic episode. She left the stack on the kitchen counter like it had appeared there on its own. Did you open these? I asked. She shook her head. I can't deal with it yet, Mom. Deal with it. As if the numbers inside those envelopes weren't already dealing with her. Together we opened them. Together we read the statements. Together we added up the totals. And together we discovered something Sarah had been avoiding. She was underwater. Her salary couldn't cover the mortgage Tom had insisted on when they bought the house. Her car loan was manageable, barely. But with divorce fees looming and half their shared debt on her shoulders now, her income was like a flimsy umbrella in a hurricane. I should have known, she said bitterly. He handled the finances. I trusted him. That sentence, I trusted him, hit me in a place I didn't want to acknowledge yet. If I had known how deep the damage went, if I had seen what she was capable of in her desperation, I might have chosen differently. But hindsight is useless in the present. I pushed the bills aside and squeezed her hand. You're not alone, I said. We'll get through this together. She nodded, but her eyes were hollow. By the end of the month I had done something I hadn't intended. I wrote her first mortgage check. She didn't protest. Not even a little. Instead she exhaled, relieved. As if this was expected. As if this was natural. I didn't realize it then, but a quiet shift had taken place. Sarah had stopped seeing my help as a gift, and started seeing it as a solution. That night, after she went to bed, I walked through the dark house turning off lights, collecting mugs, and folding the blanket she'd left crumpled on the couch. I paused at the calendar on the fridge. May 31st was still circled in red. But now it felt like a date that belonged to someone else. Someone in another life. Retirement wasn't coming. Not for me. Not anymore. And as much as I told myself it was temporary, that I would only help her for now, some instinct whispered that the storm hadn't even fully begun. Sarah was home again. But the version of her that returned was far more fragile than the one who'd left. And fragility has a way of breaking things around it. I kept telling myself it was temporary. A few months, maybe. Just until the divorce settled, until Sarah got back on her feet, until the shock wore off and she remembered she was capable. But weeks turned into months, and my life bent itself quietly around her needs. I picked up extra hours at work. I stopped going out to lunch with coworkers. I postponed doctor appointments. I cut coupons again, something I hadn't done since she was little. Every check I wrote to the mortgage company felt like a promise I hadn't consciously made. Every bill I paid felt like one more pebble added to a load I'd convinced myself I could carry. But I never complained. Not once. Because she would smile at me, that small worn-out smile, and whisper, "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you." And those words, those soft, desperate words, worked on me like anesthesia. They dulled the pain. They kept me from counting the cost. Yet something else began forming in the background, invisible but steady. A quiet expectation. By the fourth month, Sarah would leave envelopes on the counter without saying a word. The mortgage. The gas bill. Difference. Her attorney invoice. She'd just place them there beside the salt shaker, trusting I'd handle them. And I did. Because the alternative, watching her drown, felt worse than delaying my retirement. But one evening in late August, something in the tone of her voice shifted. She walked into the kitchen holding her laptop, her expression a mix of hope and fear. Mom, I was thinking. She placed the laptop on the table and turned it toward me. What if we refinance the mortgage? We? I echoed. It makes sense, she insisted, sitting down quickly. The divorce is dragging on and Tom's lawyer is being impossible. If you co-sign, I'll get a better rate. You know my credit took a hit after he stopped paying the utilities before he left. A tightness pulled at my chest. Sarah, co-signing anything during a divorce is risky. But it's just temporary, she said. You'll be off the loan once everything settles. Please, Mom, just until this mess is over. Her eyes, the same hazel eyes she had as a toddler, filled with tears. You're the only one I can rely on. And there it was again. That hook. That weapon disguised as a compliment. I should have paused. I should have asked questions. I should have remembered that temporary solutions have a way of becoming permanent regrets. But I saw her shaking hands. Saw the exhaustion in her shoulders. Saw the fear of losing her home, the home she'd painted herself, the one she'd chosen furniture for, the one she thought would be her forever. So I closed the laptop slowly and said, "All right. I'll help." Relief washed over her so intensely it made me dizzy to watch. She hugged me tightly, too tightly, her gratitude hot and desperate against my shoulder. I didn't know then what that signature would cost me. I didn't know how long temporary would last. I didn't know the line between helping and enabling had already disappeared behind us. I only knew the lie I kept repeating to myself. Once the divorce is final, things will get easier. But storms don't calm just because you wish them to. Sometimes they gather strength silently, building somewhere far off where you can't see the clouds yet. And then one day, they arrive all at once. Autumn arrived slowly that year. Cool mornings, early sunsets, the first yellow leaves drifting along the sidewalks. But inside my house, time felt stuck. Days melted into each other, each one shaped around Sarah's needs, her fears, her paperwork, her endless uncertainty. In the beginning, she thanked me for everything. Thank you for letting me stay here. Thank you for helping with the bills. Thank you for going with me to the lawyer. Thank you for listening. But gratitude is a fragile thing. It fades quietly like a scent in an open room. By October, her "thank you" had turned into "can you." A subtle shift. Easy to miss unless you were listening for it. Can you pay this month? I'm still waiting on my attorney. Can you cover the utilities again? I had to take time off work. Can you run to the store? I just don't have the energy today. Can you call the bank for me? I can't handle talking to them. And every time I answered softly, "Honey." Of course. Because I believed she was still fragile. Still healing. Still too bruised to stand on her own. But my kindness became her expectation. I'd come home from work to find her laundry already in the basket waiting for me. Dirty dishes in the sink, hers not mine. A stack of unopened bills on the counter, placed there deliberately, silently, like a task assigned rather than a burden shared. She no longer explained. She no longer asked. He just assumed. One evening, after a long day where half my department was out sick, I dragged myself through the door and found her on the couch under a blanket, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up when she said, "The electric bill came. I left it for you on the table." For a moment, just a moment, something inside me stilled. Not anger. Not hurt. Just awareness. Awareness that the balance between us had shifted in a way I never intended. I had become her safety net. But also her cushion, her crutch, her excuse not to face the world head-on. Later that night, I passed by her room on the way to bed. The door was slightly open. She was on the phone with her friend Ashley, laughing. Not the broken, shaky laugh she'd had when she returned home, but a casual, careless one. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was just passing by. But her words floated out clearly. "Yeah, I'm still at Mom's. Honestly, it's fine. She's handling most of the stress. He always does. That's kind of her thing. Her thing. As if I were not a person but a function. Role. A dependable machine that existed to absorb impact." I stood there for a moment, the air heavy in my lungs. People say motherhood is unconditional. But they never talk about the other side of that truth. How easy it is for unconditional love to be taken as unlimited duty. When she finally noticed me in the hallway, she smiled like nothing had happened. "Night, Mom," she said, warm and soft. "Good night, sweetheart," I replied. But as I walked to my room, the memory of that earlier gratitude flashed through my mind. The way she'd once cried into my shoulder, whispering, "I don't deserve you." Now she acted as though she did. Like my sacrifices were simply the natural order of things. I crawled into bed, turning off the lamp beside me, staring into the dark as a quiet truth settled over me. This wasn't temporary anymore. Not for her. And unless something changed, not for me either. November came early that year, sharp and windy, the kind of cold that creeps into your sleeves no matter how tightly you pull your coat around you. At work, people were already talking about holiday plans. Office potlucks, family gatherings, travel headaches. I nodded along, smiled politely, and kept my own plans to myself. I didn't know what the holidays would bring. I only knew one thing for certain. Retirement was no longer happening in the spring. That realization sat in my chest like a stone. But even then, I held on to hope that once the divorce settled, once the dust cleared, Sarah would find her footing again. That hope lasted until the night everything shifted, quietly, subtly, and completely. It was a Saturday. Sarah had invited 2 friends over for a girls' night. Wine, pizza, some romantic comedy playing too loudly in the living room. I didn't mind. I liked hearing her laugh again. Even if the laughter sounded thinner than it used to. I stayed in the kitchen, giving them space, cleaning up after baking something I never ate. The kind of busy work you give yourself when the house is full but you still feel unnecessary. At one point, I walked down the hallway toward my room to grab a sweater, passing the living room entrance just as Sarah's friends burst into laughter. Ashley, the same friend I'd overheard before, was waving her wine glass dramatically. "Girl, you are so lucky," she said. "If my mom paid my bills for me, I'd never move out." Sarah giggled. "I'm not taking advantage. She wants to help." "Of course she does," Lisa chimed in. "Moms like that need to feel needed. It gives them a reason to keep going." Someone snorted. "I don't even know who." Then Ashley added, "Honestly, if she's willing to put off retirement for you, let her. She's not doing anything exciting with her life anyway." My feet stopped moving. The air seemed to thin around me, the hallway stretching long and hollow. For a moment I thought I must have misheard. I wanted to believe I had misheard. But then Sarah's voice floated out, soft, almost apologetic, but not enough. "She'd be bored if she retired," she said. "She needs something. Helping me gives her purpose." Purpose. The same word I'd heard before. Not love. Not partnership. Not family. Purpose. Like I was a project. A tool. An engine that existed solely to keep her world running. I stood there, invisible, listening to my daughter explain my entire life as if I'd died and she was giving a eulogy to a room of strangers who didn't particularly care. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. Lightly. Casually. Comfortably. As if my sacrifice were not sacrifice at all. But an expectation. A duty. Something owed. My chest tightened, not with anger but with an ache I didn't have a name for. Because it wasn't just that she'd said it. It was that she believed it. I stepped quietly back into the kitchen before my presence could be noticed. Leaned against the counter. Tried to breathe. Tried to swallow the truth rising like bitter water in my throat. My daughter didn't see me as a woman with her own life. She saw me as a resource. Constant. A guarantee. A bottomless well. Later, after her friends left and the house fell silent again, she poked her head into the kitchen where I was wiping down a counter I'd already cleaned. "Night, Mom," she said with a smile. "Love you." "Love you too," I replied. My voice didn't crack. My hands didn't shake. I didn't confront her. Not yet. But something in me shifted that night. A movement so small and quiet that even I didn't recognize its shape. It was the first hairline fracture in the foundation of the life we were pretending was temporary. And fractures, they never stay small. December arrived with its usual rush of lights and cold winds, but that year the holidays felt different. Hollow somehow. Sarah insisted we decorate early, pulling boxes from the basement and humming along to Christmas songs as if the season could patch the holes in her life. I went along with it. Because mothers learn to pretend even when the pretending hurts. We strung lights around the banister. Unpacked ornaments wrapped in tissue. Hung the old ceramic angel she'd made in 3rd grade. For a moment, it almost felt like the two of us from years ago. Before marriage, before heartbreak, before bills and forged signatures and quiet expectations. But the illusion didn't last. One evening, just a week before Christmas, Sarah came home flushed and jittery. I had lunch with my attorney, she said, dropping her purse on the chair. We're getting closer to a settlement. That's good, I said, keeping my voice light. Did he give a timeline? A couple months, maybe less. But, she hesitated. There are complications. Of course there were. I set down the dish towel I'd been using and faced her. What kind of complications? She bit her lip, the same nervous gesture she'd had since childhood. They're saying I'll have to refinance the house again once the divorce is final. Because the mortgage is tied to both our names. And my credit, well, I can't qualify a loan. Not yet. She paused, then added softly, so I'll need you to stay on the loan a little longer. There it was again, that quiet assumption. That unspoken expectation. That dangerous belief that my life existed to hold hers together. How long is a little? I asked. He shrugged. A year? Maybe 2. 2 years. 2 more years of working. 2 more years of delaying retirement. 2 more years of bills and signatures and being the safety net she no longer saw as extraordinary. Something inside me wavered, not enough to break, not yet, but enough to bend painfully. Mom, she said, placing her hand over mine. Her tone softened, coaxing. You're strong. You have plenty of time to retire later. And you're not doing anything big right now anyway. It's not like I'm asking you to sacrifice your life. But she was. She just didn't see it. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, rolled her eyes. It's Tom, she muttered. Probably trying to drag out the settlement again. She took the call in the hallway. I didn't intend to listen. Truly I didn't. But her voice carried, sharp, angry, exhausted. No, I didn't make those withdrawals. You did. I told you my mom is helping. Well, someone has to be responsible, Tom. Yes, she co-signed. Because she actually cares about me. Don't you dare blame me for the financial mess you created. And then quietly, dangerously. Look, the loan is in her name. He's paying it. So just sign the papers and stop making this harder. I froze. The loan is in her name. He's paying it. Just sign the papers. Such a small word. Such a devastating one. I heard Tom say something muffled and sharp, and Sarah snapped back. She'll handle it. She always does. He always does. The final puzzle piece slid into place with a clarity that felt like ice in my veins. Sarah wasn't asking anymore. She wasn't hoping or pleading or stumbling. He was planning. Planning around me. Planning with me as the constant. Planning her future on the assumption that I would continue to sacrifice mine. And for the first time since she moved back home, I felt something heavy and cold inside me begin to crack open. Not anger. Awareness. A bright, painful awareness of the truth I'd been too afraid to see. My daughter didn't rely on me because she needed help. She relied on me because she believed I would never say no. When she hung up, she walked back into the kitchen as if nothing had happened. Sorry about that, she sighed. He's impossible. What were we talking about? Oh right. The refinance. We should schedule a meeting at the bank next week. As if we were partners in this. As if my life were a shared account she could access whenever hers felt empty. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in months I asked myself the question I had avoided. Was I helping her heal? Or helping her avoid responsibility? She didn't notice my silence. Instead she smiled brightly, kissed my cheek and said, "You're the best mom in the world. I don't know what I'd do without you." But unlike before, her words didn't soothe me. They scared me. Because for the first time I truly understood what she meant. And what she expected. And how far she might go to keep things that way. January arrived with gray skies and cold mornings, the kind where the world feels muted, like someone turned the volume down on life. I welcomed the quiet. After the chaos of the holidays, I needed quiet. But life has a way of breaking silence exactly when you begin to rely on it. It happened on a Tuesday. A long, exhausting day at work, the kind that leaves your shoulders tense and your patience thin. I trudged up the driveway, planning nothing more ambitious than reheating leftovers and going to bed early. There was mail in the box. Mostly junk, a catalog, a flyer from a dentist. And then one envelope that made my stomach tighten. White. Windowed. From the bank. Addressed to me. I almost tossed it onto the table to deal with later, but something stopped me. A tug. A whisper of dread. I slit the envelope open standing right there in the kitchen still wearing my coat. Inside was a statement for a loan I didn't recognize. A loan with my name. My social security number. My address. A loan past due. At first I thought it was a mistake. A clerical error. That happens more often than people think. Someone types a 9 instead of a 6, a 3 instead of an 8. Suddenly a stranger's debt lands in your mailbox. But then I saw the signature. My signature. Except, it wasn't mine. The shape was familiar but not enough. Close but not right. A copy of a copy of a copy. A forgery. My coat slid from my shoulders to the floor. My hands shook so violently that I had to sit down. I flipped the pages, every line a deeper horror. The loan had been taken out months earlier. Payments had been missed. Late fees were piling up. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the hum of the refrigerator. There was only one other person who had access to my personal documents. Only one person who had seen my signature 1,000 times throughout her life. On permission slips, medical forms, tuition checks, birthday cards. The room spun. I gripped the table, forcing myself to breathe. No, I whispered into the empty kitchen. She wouldn't. She wouldn't. But the truth was already uncoiling inside me, heavy and undeniable. I reached for my phone with trembling fingers. Opened my camera roll. Zoomed in on a picture I'd taken months ago of a form I signed at work. Then I laid it beside the signature on the loan document. Not the same. Not even close when you really looked. Just similar enough for a bank clerk to approve without blinking. A wave of cold swept through me, not anger, not yet, but something deeper. Something like grief wearing steel armor. My daughter had forged my name. My daughter had taken out a loan in my name. My daughter had let it fall behind. And all the while she'd sat at my kitchen table eating food I bought, living in a house I paid for, smiling at me with those same hazel eyes she'd used to beg for help. The front door opened and Sarah breezed inside, shaking off the cold. "Mom? You home?" I slid the papers into a folder before she could see them. I wasn't ready. I needed clarity before confrontation. Facts before accusations. In the kitchen, I called, somehow keeping my voice even. She walked in, cheeks rosy, scarf half tangled in her hair. "You look pale," she said. "Are you okay?" I studied her face. The face I'd loved every day for 30 years. The face I'd sat beside through illnesses, scraped knees, heartbreaks, spelling bees, graduations. The face of someone who had taken advantage of me in a way I never imagined possible. I swallowed hard and forced a nod. "Long day at work," I said. "I'm going to lie down." She shrugged, already grabbing snacks from the pantry. "Hey, I might go out later with Ashley. Don't wait up." I walked to my bedroom, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed while the truth settled over me like ice. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't desperation anymore. It was a pattern. A pattern I hadn't wanted to see. A pattern that was about to get worse before it got better. Because if Sarah had forged one document, I had no idea how many more were out there waiting for me to find them, or what they would cost me next. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the forged signature burned behind my eyelids, replaying over and over like a cruel loop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah at my kitchen table months ago, pushing bills toward me with a soft, grateful smile. "Thank you, Mom. You're saving me, Mom." But now the truth whispered beneath those memories like rot beneath paint. You were never saving her. You were shielding her from consequences. By morning I felt hollow, like something fundamental in me had cracked during the night. But hollow or not, I knew what I had to do. I drove straight from work to the small law office above the bakery on Maple Street. The sign on the door read Elaine Mercer, attorney at law. She'd helped a coworker of mine during a messy estate issue years ago. Tough woman. Sharp eyes. The kind who didn't waste words. When I stepped inside her office, she looked up over her glasses. "You look like someone who needs answers," she said. "I need the truth," I replied. "All of it." She didn't ask for details right away. Instead, she gestured for me to sit and waited until I was ready. I handed her the loan statement with the forged signature. The moment her eyes scanned the page, something cold flashed across her face. Not surprise, recognition. "Who forged it?" she asked. "My daughter," I whispered. "I think this is only the first one." Elaine leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the desk. All right, she said. Then we need to pull everything tied to your name. Every account, every loan, every line of credit, every inquiry. Financial, legal, property. If there are more, we'll find them. It took 3 days. 3 days of silence from me and normalcy from Sarah. Normalcy that now felt like an illusion I had accidentally built for her. 3 days of working all day, pretending everything was fine, coming home to a daughter who laughed on the phone and complained about court delays while I smiled through questions I no longer knew how to answer. 3 days of waiting for Elaine's call, each hour tightening around me like a vice. When the call finally came, Elaine's voice was low and steady, the kind of steady that prepares you for impact. We need to meet, she said. There's more. My breath caught. How much more? Enough that you should come now. I drove to her office on autopilot, my pulse beating in my ears. When I walked in, Elaine had a folder on her desk, thick, overstuffed, held together with a rubber band that looked ready to snap. She didn't sugarcoat it. Your daughter has taken out 3 loans in your name, she said, opening the folder. 2 credit cards. A line of credit tied to your house. She also signed your name on a refinancing agreement last year. My stomach twisted. She refinanced the house? My voice came out thin and foreign. Elaine nodded grimly. Without your knowledge. She forged your signature on that too. I felt the room tilt. I gripped the arm of the chair until my knuckles whitened. Elaine continued, her voice firm but not unkind. And there's something else. Your daughter listed you as a financial guarantor on her divorce settlement documents. That means if the court assigns her certain debts, creditors could pursue you as well. My heart dropped. She did that without asking me. She didn't list it as voluntary, Elaine said. She signed your name on those too. For a moment I couldn't breathe. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't ignorance. It wasn't desperation. It was intention. A pattern. A strategy. A quiet, methodical shifting of her burdens onto me, one forged document at a time. Elaine leaned forward. Listen to me carefully, she said. You are in more danger financially than you realize. If your daughter continues down this path, your house, your pension, and every asset in your name could be at risk. This isn't just about helping her anymore. This is about protecting yourself. I swallowed hard. My voice shook when I finally spoke. What do I do? Elaine closed the folder gently, but the weight of it echoed between us. You build a paper wall, she said. A legal one. You protect every account, you notify every institution, you freeze every credit line. And then... She paused as if choosing her next words carefully. You confront her. Proof. And witnesses. Because someone who forges signatures doesn't stop until they're forced to. The truth hung in the air like the heavy end of a storm. My daughter, the child I had sacrificed my retirement for, had been using me. Not accidentally. Not reluctantly. Deliberately. The thread had been pulled. And now the whole fabric of our lives was beginning to unravel. I left Elaine's office feeling like someone had quietly removed the floor beneath my life. The world outside looked the same. Cars passing, people chatting on the sidewalk, a woman carrying a bag of groceries, but nothing felt the same. When betrayal comes from a stranger, you get angry. When it comes from your own child, you get quiet. That quiet stayed with me for days. At home, I moved through the rooms like a ghost, watching Sarah more carefully than I ever had before. The way she avoided bills. The way she changed the subject whenever finances came up. The way she smiled at me, soft, sweet, practiced. It struck me then. Sarah had always been good at pretending. But I wasn't pretending anymore. I followed every step Elaine laid out for me. First, I called the bank and reported the forged signatures. The woman on the phone apologized profusely and froze the accounts immediately. Next, I froze my credit. Every bureau, every portal. It took an hour, but when I finished, I felt something loosen in my chest. A small victory. A thin shield. Then I reached out to the mortgage company. I told them I had never signed the refinancing agreement. They transferred me to a fraud specialist who promised to review the matter urgently. Urgently. I appreciated the word even if I didn't trust it. Finally, I locked every financial document in a file box and hid it in a place Sarah would never think to check. At the bottom of an old sewing chest in the garage, beneath scrap fabric and broken thread spools she hadn't touched since high school. I didn't snoop through her things. I didn't monitor her calls. But I watched her. I watched her come home with takeout she couldn't afford. I watched her scroll through online shopping sites late at night. I watched her toss bills into a drawer like they were junk mail. I watched her laugh on the phone with Ashley saying things like, "I'm sure Mom's got it. She always does." Always. That word again. At the end of that week, Elaine called. "Everything is documented," she said. "My office is prepared. And the bank has confirmed the signatures are fraudulent." I closed my eyes. "Are you ready?" she asked gently. "No," I whispered. "But I will be." "Good. Then the next step is confrontation." The word felt heavy. Unnatural. Wrong. A mother isn't meant to confront her child like an adversary. But Sarah wasn't acting like a child anymore. She was acting like someone who had learned she could take, and I would give. I didn't want to fight. I wanted the truth. But truth rarely comes quietly. "Do you want me present?" Elaine asked. "Yes," I said. "You and someone else." Because I needed more than legal support. I needed someone Sarah respected. Someone she couldn't manipulate with tears or excuses. I called Mark, my late husband's brother. A quiet, steady man who had always loved Sarah fiercely, maybe blindly. When I told him everything, his silence stretched long and disbelieving. Finally, he said in a voice thick with both anger and sorrow, "I'll be there." 2 days later, the stage was set. Elaine cleared her afternoon. Mark rearranged his work schedule. I took the day off. I told Sarah only one thing. "I need to talk to you on Thursday." "Important." She shrugged, unfazed. "Hey, Mom. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." But she didn't know what was coming. She had no idea what sat inside the folder waiting on Elaine's desk. She didn't know that her trail of forged signatures, her secret loans, her whys, would no longer be shielded by my silence. For the first time in months, I felt something new rising inside me. Not anger. Resolve. Because this wasn't just about money. Or retirement. Or ruined credit. This was about reclaiming myself. My boundaries. My voice. The confrontation was coming. The reckoning she never expected. And I was ready. Thursday arrived wrapped in a cold, pale sky. The kind of winter morning that makes every sound sharper. I woke early, long before Sarah, and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I barely tasted. My hands weren't shaking, but my chest felt tight, like my ribs were bracing themselves. At 9:30, Elaine texted, "Here. Whenever you're ready." Mark arrived 10 minutes later. He stepped inside, his face grave, eyes softer than I expected. "You sure you want to do this today?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "Today." We moved to the living room and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, Sarah patted downstairs in her pajamas, yawning. "Morning," she said breezily. "What's Uncle Mark doing here?" "Sit down, Sarah," I said. She blinked, confused, then frowned as she noticed Elaine in the hallway entrance, placing a thick folder on the coffee table. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked at her, really looked. At the girl I raised. At the woman who had slowly learned to lean on me so heavily she'd forgotten where she ended and I began. "Sarah," I said gently, "we need to talk about the loans." Her face went still. "What loans?" she asked too quickly. I nodded to Elaine. She opened the folder, revealing copies of every document, every forged signature, every loan agreement, every credit line, every refinancing. All of it thoughtfully arranged. All of it undeniable. Sarah's eyes widened, then narrowed, then darted to me, to Mark, back to me. "Mom, what is this?" Her voice trembled, but not from fear. From anger. "These," Elaine said calmly, "are documents bearing your mother's forged signature." Sarah laughed. A short, brittle sound. "Forged? Are you serious?" "Mom, tell her. Tell her you signed these. This is insane." I held her gaze. "I didn't sign them, Sarah." Her mouth fell open. "What? Of course you did. You said, 'Mom, you promised you'd help me with the refinance.'" "I promised to help," I said softly. "I did not promise to sign my name on things without knowing about them." She shook her head violently, like she could shake the truth away. "You're remembering wrong. I told you about the refinance. You must have forgotten. You're stressed, Mom. You've been working too much. Maybe your memory." "Stop right there," Mark said sharply. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on her. "We're not doing that. We're not blaming your mother's memory or age. The signatures are forged, Sarah. Anyone can see that. She looked stunned for a moment, then her expression shifted, quick, calculating, almost cold. Fine, she snapped. Maybe I did sign your name. But I had to. I didn't have a choice. You weren't helping me fast enough. I stared at her, feeling the words hit like blows. Not helping you fast enough? I repeated quietly. She jumped to her feet, pacing. You don't understand what it's like to have your life fall apart. I was drowning. I had to keep the house. I had bills and lawyers and I couldn't afford everything, and you were taking forever to decide what to do. I was working, I said, voice trembling. I was paying your bills. I delayed my retirement. You were supposed to, she burst out. The room fell silent. I felt Mark inhale sharply beside me. Elaine's pen froze in her hand. Sarah stood in the center of the living room, chest heaving, eyes wild. You're my mother, she said, as if explaining something obvious to a child. You're supposed to take care of me. You always have. I swallowed hard. I took care of you, I said. That's true. But forging my name, stealing my identity, putting my house and my credit at risk. I didn't steal anything, she screamed. I borrowed. And I was going to fix it. You weren't giving me enough time. Sarah, Elaine said, stepping forward. Forging a signature is fraud. Filing financial documents with someone else's name is a crime. If the bank pursues this, and they have every legal right to, you could face charges. Sarah's face drained of color. Charges? What? Oh, no, they can't, Mom. Mom, tell her you won't let that happen. She ran to me, grabbing my hands, gripping them tightly. You won't let them charge me, she pleaded. You're my mother. You love me. You wouldn't let them do that. I held her hands, feeling the familiar warmth. Yes, I whispered. I love you. She let out a shaky breath of relief. And because I love you, this has to stop. Her relief shattered. What? She breathed. I will not lie for you, I said, tears filling my eyes. I will not cover this up. I won't let you drag my future down with you. Not anymore. She stumbled back as if struck. You're choosing yourself over me, she whispered. I'm choosing what's right, I said softly. For both of us. Her face twisted in hurt, anger, disbelief. You're abandoning me, she said. No, I said. I'm finally holding you accountable. For a long moment she said nothing. Just stared at me with a look I'll never forget. A mix of betrayal and astonishment, as if she'd just discovered gravity existed and couldn't understand why she was falling. Mark stood. That's enough for today, he said gently. You heard the truth, Sarah. And now you need to decide what kind of woman you're going to be moving forward. But Sarah didn't look at him. She looked at me. The woman who'd given her everything. The woman she thought would never say no. And in her eyes, for the very first time, I saw recognition. Recognition that the rules had changed. Recognition that I was no longer the mother she could manipulate with tears and excuses. Recognition that the safety net she had relied on for years was gone. And in the quiet that followed, something inside both of us broke. Something that had needed to break for a very long time. Sarah didn't speak to me for 3 days after the confrontation. The house felt strange without her voice, too quiet, too still. I kept expecting to hear her come down the stairs, expecting to see a mug left in the sink, expecting a bill placed on the counter like a silent assignment. But her door stayed closed. And for the first time since she'd returned home, I didn't knock. I didn't ask if she needed anything. I didn't offer comfort or money or solutions. I let the silence do what years of softness never had. On the 4th morning she emerged. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair unbrushed. Her voice small but clear. Are you going to press charges? She asked. It wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was the first honest question she'd asked me in a long time. No, I said. Not unless the bank decides to pursue it. But I won't lie for you. And I won't protect you from the consequences. He swallowed hard, nodding. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think you'd ever say no to me. That sentence hung in the air between us, heavy and fragile. Sarah, I said quietly, love isn't the same as obligation. And helping isn't the same as rescuing. She looked away, ashamed. I thought you'd be okay working longer. I thought you didn't really want to retire. You never talked about plans. I exhaled a long, tired breath. Because I was waiting for you to get better. To stand on your own again. But She stopped herself, realizing the truth. I didn't try. I just let you fix everything. Yes, I said softly. You did. She wiped her eyes. So what happens now? Now, I said, you take responsibility. You call the bank. You work out repayment. You stop using my name for anything. You get financial counseling and you rebuild your credit without using mine. And you, she whispered. I looked at her, really looked. Not at the daughter I kept trying to rescue, but at the woman she had become. I'm retiring, I said simply. This spring. For real this time. Her breath caught. That soon. That late, I corrected. I should have done it years ago. She nodded, slow and shaking. Can I still stay here? For now, I said. But not forever. You need to build a life that doesn't depend on mine. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but her voice held something new. A flicker of humility or maybe adulthood. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. I touched her hand gently. That's all I've ever wanted. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something ease inside me. A knot loosening. A weight lifting. A path clearing. Choosing myself didn't mean abandoning her. It meant saving both of us from the life we were sinking into. A life we could no longer pretend was temporary. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it came all at once. Soft rain, green buds, warm breezes drifting through open windows. And with it came my last day at work. My coworkers threw me a small party in the break room. A sheet cake. A card filled with signatures. A few jokes about me escaping. But as I walked out of City Hall for the last time, it didn't feel like escape. It felt like returning to myself. At home things were different. Sarah was working more hours, budgeting strictly, attending financial counseling sessions on Tuesday evenings. She didn't ask me for money anymore. She didn't leave bills on the counter. She kept her room tidy, cooked dinner twice a week, and, slowly, cautiously, began rebuilding the trust she had broken. We weren't healed, but we were trying. One morning in early May, I sat on the porch with my coffee, letting the sunlight warm my face. The air smelled like lilacs. Somewhere down the street a dog barked. It was a simple moment, but it felt like freedom. Sarah stepped onto the porch quietly, holding her own mug. Mind if I sit with you? She asked. Of course not. We sat together in comfortable silence. She took a sip, then said, I talked to the bank yesterday. I set up a repayment plan for the loan. I nodded. I'm glad. And I found an apartment, she added softly. It's small but nice. I can move in July. I turned to look at her. She looked older somehow. Not in age but in spirit. I'm proud of you, I said. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. I know I hurt you, she whispered. I didn't mean to, not like that. I was scared. And selfish. And lost. And I used you because I knew you'd let me. I nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that. I want to be better, she said. Not just for you. For myself. I reached over and squeezed her hand. That's all I've ever wanted for you. We sat there until the sun rose fully over the neighborhood, washing everything in gold. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about bills or deadlines or signatures or sacrifices. I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I had regained. My future. My peace. My self-respect. And, slowly but surely, my daughter. Retirement didn't look the way I once imagined. It wasn't beaches or travel brochures or endless leisure. It was quieter, deeper, more personal. It was mornings like this one. Soft sunlight, warm coffee, and a heart finally learning how to rest. My daughter's mistakes hadn't defined me. And my sacrifices hadn't ruined me. They had led me here. To a life rebuilt not on obligation, but on truth. And that, I realized, was a freedom I had earned twice. Once through decades of work. And once through the courage to finally claim the life that was mine.